On your radio and computer anywhere around the world. Lock it in to the Michael Baisden Show podcast.
Aiyana, how you doing? Marriage, education, and relationship coach. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Glad to be here.
I love the name of this article. It's called Marriage is for Grown Folks. And I asked people, Aiyana, I said, if you had any advice knowing what you know about marriage, what are some of the things you would tell people to be aware of?
Oh, I would say the first thing ever is to be prepared to be challenged in a way that you have never been challenged before, that all of the assumptions that we make, we don't even realize we make assumptions about what the expectations are, about disciplining children, about how housework will be done, about, what you're going to do for me and what I'm going to do for you, just in terms of language. We talk about love languages, and, I tend to do with my husband what I'd like for him to do for me. But we make all of these assumptions, and what you have to do is recognize that even if you've been with somebody for 4 or 5 years, when you get married, you're starting over. And it's a totally different reality when you're married. So you have to begin to be re-educated again about your spouse.
I was talking about people who are already divorced. In fact, that's what I talked about the last couple hours. I'm like, how did people get married less than a year ago and they already divorced? What did they not talk about that made that happen?
See, here's what they didn't talk about. They didn't talk about whether or not, first, this is the thing I think is most important. They didn't talk about whether they recognize that this happily ever after thing is not always happily ever after. It's just not happening all the time. Are we willing to endure being uncomfortable? Are we willing to endure the fact that sometimes in the relationship, I have more insight on an issue, and my spouse isn't ready to get there, and this is impacting me, and what do I do as I sit, and I'm clear. I've been in those spaces, and my husband has been in those places that, he just doesn't get it. So what do? I say, okay, well, it's time out, tap it out. I'm ready to go. That's what most folks do. Are you really willing to commit to the life of someone and to their development? The best marriages really help each other to become better people. They'll recognize the reality that it's a process, and we ain't going to all be walking around enlightened all the time. We're just a mess sometimes, and we have to figure out how to deal with that while we're still committed to each other.
We're going to come back and have a conversation with on the podcast. You can check it out later at 1-877-622-3269. Go to BaisdenLive.com to check out the podcast. And right now, give us a call. I want to know what happens, man. How did you get married and divorced already? It's the Michael Baisden Show. Classic. Groove with you, Isley Brothers on Grown Folks Radio.
The Podcast Extra. Exclusive content from The Michael Baisden Show. The Podcast Extra. Only on The Michael Baisden Show.
Welcome back to the podcast on The Michael Baisden Show. Talking to, because I done jacked her name up like 1,000 times, George and Juan.
No, you have.
Aiyana Mod, right, Aiyana?
You got it. That's right.
I got to talk to you about this article. Marriage is for grown folks. Now, of course, that doesn't mean old folks, because we know some people who are old are not necessarily grown.
That's right.
What do you mean marriage is for grown folks?
What I mean is that folks come into marriage, and we really don't realize it. As young kids, we're all, coming up in our own backgrounds. We're with our families, and we are being conditioned every single day as to what is okay, what is appropriate, what is right. And when you're dating someone, before you get married, all of those things don't come out. And when you get married, you assume that your spouse is going to get with you on whatever it is that you feel is appropriate. I'll give you a prime example. My husband and I, both, folks who have an education, we're very invested in our community. And when it came time to school our children, I was clear our children were going to go to private school. He said, well, you went to private school, but I went to public school, and I had a higher SAT score than you. And it was about the investment of my parents in my education. Well, we had to go back and forth on that thing, and until we came to some resolution. I assumed that he would be with me because we both value education. But the method isn't always the same in terms of how we all think that we're going to get to the end result. We had to really deal with that thing for almost a year before we came to some resolution.
George said something early in the show today. It kind of caught me by surprise. I said, George, what could anybody have told you about marriage? He said, I don't know that if anybody could have really said anything to me. And his opinion is probably very typical of most people who just want to be married, and they don't want to hear anything that's going to discourage them from being married.
Right.
Or they think, like you just said, I got it. We already talked about that. But obviously they're not talking about everything.
Well, here's the thing. The piece that we talk about all the time is that at the foundation of a good marriage is the same thing that should be at the foundation of a good person, which is constant analysis of where you are psychologically, mentally, emotionally, and a lot of we're not doing that work on ourselves anyway. So I heard someone say one time that the failure of most marriages is low self-esteem. So that your partner, when you're with them all day, every day, they keep reflecting a mirror back to you that they could not reflect when they went home at night when you all were dating. They keep saying, I love you here and I love you here, but you still got this issue right here. You have not worked on it. You have not
Wait. Let me think about what you just said, because that was kind of deep. Back that up a little bit. You said that what now that when they're with you, they're reflecting is not the same? Break that down again.
Okay, so what I'm really getting at is that when we're single, we can choose what we're going to work on. We can choose what we want to see. We may know there's some issues we have, but we choose what we're going to focus on. When you're with someone else who has the opportunity to see you at your best and your worst, even when you're pretending and you're faking, they are going to hold the mirror up to you. They don't even realize they're doing it when they say, you know, I heard what you said the other day, but, you know, that's really not consistent with what we talked about. Why, when we go out in public, you act a little bit different? That's just one example. They keep putting a mirror up to you, showing you who you really are. And in a good marriage, when our spouse shows us who we really are and who we really can be, we will be able to respond to that in a way that takes us in a place of growth.
Is there
most of us are, we're wounded. We're like, oh, you know, you're going on.
But is there any way to fix that or find that out while you're dating? Do you have to wait until you're married to find that out? I mean, I guess my question is, how much can we find out before marriage so that we can have a good marriage once we're in it? Because you said earlier during the on-air part that when you get married, you start over.
Right, that's right.
And I think that, I mean, I get that on one end, and on one end I'm conflicted with it because I want to feel like this person is still the same person, and people do think that once they say I do, magically things are going to change, but they don't.
I think that I'm going to give you a two-part answer. The first thing is that you can always do more work. That's why we have coaching and all kind of counseling and groups. They got all kind of things out here for folks. So,
gotcha.
You know, you get in, you get out what you put in. But I will say that it is inevitable that you will start over. There is something spiritual and scientific, I believe, that goes on when people commit themselves in a very public, very firm way that you're going to start over. So
what starts over? I want specifics, because as I'm thinking about this and my listeners are thinking, it's like the opposite of what we've been kind of telling them, George.
Yeah, but life starts over in general for both people, because you've been used to doing everything your way, making decisions your way, doing things your way, and now that way.
But you all make it sound like they weren't dating before they got together. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate because I know that some other people may think the way I'm thinking, and I've been telling people all along that when you get married, nothing changes. And you all are saying everything changed.
Oh, yeah.
It does.
Everything changes, Mike, because let me tell you this. You all can, let me tell you, my husband and I, we actually ventured out and got a joint bank account before we got married. And I'm going to tell you that when we got married and we continued to talk about some of the same issues that we had been talking about prior to marriage, the whole tone changed, the whole feeling changed, because now it is a requirement. It is not an option. Even though we thought we were, you know, operating under the guise of requirements before marriage, we were not. It's a requirement that we work this out together. And I cannot make a move if I'm truly respecting my marriage until we come to a resolution. That right there puts a whole energy in the scene that is just, you know, for some folks who like me can be kind of selfish and very, very opinionated and want to do what you want to do. It's very difficult for people.
You know, that's the part that needs to be communicated to people before they get married. I can't believe in 2011, Aiyana, that people are not required to have counseling before marriage. I mean, it's one of the most important things you can do. They'll give people a driver's test before they give them a driver's license.
That's right.
But when it comes to marriage, it's like, go ahead and do it. I mean, give me a break.
Yeah, I mean, people are, in this society, we are really encouraged to do what we want to do. You know, it's a real encouragement of a devotion to self, what you want, what you desire, what you need, what you want. And so when we're encouraged to do that, we don't think much about what is required for me being with someone else. We don't think about what's required for me to be a better person. So, I mean, like I said, I'm always going back to, how are you going to be a better person? How are you going to build yourself? What insight are you willing to invest in getting about your own self before you can even think about being with another person? Because
I tell you,
it always comes back to self.
My mind is going back to what you and George both just agreed on. And I was married. I don't think our marriage changed when we got married, because I think I'm a communicating person. So we talked about everything. So if things are going to change once you get married, then it's almost justified in saying, well, the person that I married is not the person that I was dating because it changed. Because that's kind of an out for people to say, okay, well, you're not the same person now. You've changed from the person that I was dating, and I don't like this person I'm marrying. I like the person I was dating.
Well, yeah, but that you can't expect that, and you can't expect ever a person to stay the same. What person stays the same?
No, but a ceremony shouldn't change you, though. A ceremony shouldn't change the relationship. I mean, Juan, you've been married for a couple of years now. Do you feel like there was a change once you said I do, or did you all continue to do the things you were already doing?
We continue to do the things we did, but there was also a gradual, progressive change within our relationship.
But that's gradual progression no matter whether you're married or not, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, look, I'm a type of guy. Go ahead, Doc.
Well, let me just say this. It's no matter what, but let me give you an example. If you're on the job and you've been friends with your coworker for years and years and years, and now all of a sudden they get a new title, and so they come back into the office, and they're not your superior necessarily, but they have a superior title than you. They're doing some other things. Now all of a sudden the dynamics change. Even though they're not your superior, you might not have the same conversations that you had with them earlier on because you're not sure, well, wait a minute, is my information safe? You might feel a little bit differently. Now they're a little more hesitant to talk about things, or perhaps they're a little bit, out there. Those subtle dynamics that take place within relationships, period, are going to happen. There's nothing you can do.
There's nothing you can do. I agree with that. There's nothing you can do. It is what it is. And I guess the whole idea behind the show is to be prepared for it.
That's
because
right.
see, nobody says that. I mean, I think people need to admit things are going to change, and these are some of the things that can change. And if you're not going to counseling, if you're not even reading a book about marriage, this stuff catches you totally by surprise. And most people's response is, "I need to get out," as opposed to "I need to fix it," which is exactly what we were talking about. Go ahead, George.
No, I mean you're absolutely right in that, and that even if you're not prepared for the change, be willing to accept the change. A lot of things are going to change, and sometimes you're not going to see the change coming. But it's sad to be able to say it, but it's true. So many people can't deal with it, and they want to throw up the white flag immediately.
It's not easy. It's not easy particularly when you get older. How old were you when you got married, Aiyana?
I was 24 when I got married.
You're still pretty young. Yeah.
Yes, I am. I was 24. I am 34 now. And so before that, we were high school sweethearts. But one of the precious gems that I got on my journey in marriage, one of the precious gems that an older couple share with us, is that the difference between successful and unsuccessful couples are not the issues, but their ability to manage them. So if you think that when you have a major issue, like a life-changing issue in your relationship, this is the time where I just got to say, no more, I gotta go. When you go to that next marriage, there'll be another life-changing issue.
Sure, it's not going to change. Because there may be infidelity, there may be financial issues. I mean, I agree with you 100%. Either you're going to be about it or don't be about it. That's why I'm not married, because I don't want to deal with those issues. But when people decide to be married, they got to understand this comes with the deal. So many women say, I want a man that's ready to commit. Well, I hope that you and him are ready to commit to all this stuff that you're going to have to deal with together, because marriage is not easy. Being single, it's a lot easier than being married.
That's right.
All right. Aiyana, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Article is called Marriage is for Grown Folks. Boy, you got that right. Coming back with more of your calls on the Michael Baisden Show.
Available 24 hours a day. Exclusive programming from the Michael Baisden Show. It's the Michael Baisden Podcast on demand.